the UK representative, just has begun, so we're going to cross live back to the UN.
Release of the hostages who have been cruelly held by Hamas since the 7th of October, and to end the appalling suffering of Palestinian civilians. I'll make 3 points. First, the Israeli aid system is inhumane, ineffective, dangerous, and fueling instability. Reports and images this week of children dying from starvation are beyond horrific. The IDF is shooting at desperate Palestinian civilians on an almost daily basis. Hamas is exploiting this disorder. We call on Israel to end these attacks, hold those responsible to account, and to work with the UN to implement effective aid distribution in line with humanitarian principles and international humanitarian law. And let me reaffirm the UK's firm and unequivocal support for the UN and OCHA in their brave efforts to get aid into Gaza. We also condemn recent strikes on the WHO in Deir el-Balah. Humanitarians and civilians must be protected. Second, we condemn Defence Minister Katz's proposals of forced displacement to Rafah. Illegal settlement expansion in the West Bank continues at pace, as well as settler violence and even terrorism against Palestinians. This is an accelerating campaign to prevent a Palestinian state. We condemn these attacks and call for Israel to hold its citizens to account. We also oppose the reintroduction of the E1 settlement plan, which is a flagrant breach of international law. Third, we are clear that Hamas must play no future role in the governance of Gaza or be able to threaten Israel's security again. However, the organisation which represents a credible alternative to Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, is being undermined by Israeli actions. Israel is withholding $2.6 billion in clearance revenues, crippling the Palestinian economy and pushing essential health and education services to the brink. This is not conducive to Israel's security. President, the United Kingdom is resolute in our commitment to a two-state solution, and my Foreign Secretary has been clear that we are prepared to take further action to prevent the forcible erosion of the only viable path to lasting peace. Next week's conference, co-chaired by France and Saudi Arabia, is a vital opportunity to demonstrate the strength of international resolve to secure a better future for Israelis, Palestinians, and the region. I thank you.
Thank you, Madam Representative of the United Kingdom. I would now give the floor.
Well, that was the UK's ambassador. Let me bring Tom Bateman back in from Washington, who was listening to that. And Tom, listening, it didn't go on for very long, but it was probably the boldest I've heard from the UK representative there at the UN in terms of its criticisms of what Israel is currently doing.
Yeah, I think reflective of increasingly critical language from the United Kingdom over recent days and weeks. From the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, for example, the fact that they joined 25 other countries in signing a joint statement that called for the war to end immediately and talked about the drip feed of aid into Gaza, calling on Israel to flood aid into the Strip and end the siege on the population there. So I think we're hearing that reflected in Barbara Woodward's statement there to the United Nations. Interesting that she mentioned the conference next week that is taking place at the UN in New York, chaired by the French and the Saudis, around a two-state solution. So this has been a sort of diplomatic lever that some big European countries have been threatening to pull, basically, that they know the Israelis are trying to stop, about the potential recognition of a Palestinian state unilaterally without negotiations with the Israelis. Now, the Americans have threatened those countries, or were threatening those countries last month, not to attend this conference and threatening severe diplomatic consequences in a really unprecedented move between allies. They're going ahead with this conference now, even though President Macron delayed it because of the Israeli strikes on Iran. But it's happening next week. So that's going to be a really key moment, I think, in terms of the diplomatic push and pull between the Americans and their allies over the way that they are treating Israel, and the increasing divisions between these allies over the way they're viewing Israel.
Tom Bateman, live there in Washington. Thanks for that analysis. Thanks for your time.